Welcome to Alleghany Memories. I am Suzanne Irwin, and on behalf of the Alleghany Historical Genealogical Society, it is my pleasure to welcome you inside to the Historical Museum located on Main Street in Sparta, North Carolina, and to episodes of interviews with older folks in our area. Each episode is an oral history featuring personal remembrances about life during the Great Depression, the war years, and other life-defining events that will be of interest to you, and learn what sculptured the lives of those who participate in these interviews. Now, during these interviews, we will encounter ideas, goals, and the deep faith that defined a way of life which is our common heritage. There are no scripts. The people who share remembrances can choose their interviewer and be comfortable in telling their stories in their own words. The interview can also be conducted in a place of their choosing, perhaps in the comfort of their own home. On behalf of the Alleghany Historical Genealogical Society, we encourage your participation, and if you know of relatives or friends who have special remembrances, we welcome you to contact the Society and join us in this very enriching project.
I'd like to thank you again, Suzanne, for allowing us to interview our members of the Marine Corps League. It's a pleasure today to be able to interview J.T. Pardue. Mr. Pardue is our oldest member of the Walter Frank Osborne Detachment of the Marine Corps League. And sir, it is a pleasure. Thank you for allowing us into your home on this cold, dreary day and this nice warm fire. It's comfortable, and it's nice to be in the presence of a World War II veteran.
Thank you. Glad to have you here.
Well, JT, how about telling me a little bit about your early life? Where were you born, your parents? Can you tell us something of your early life, sir?
Yes, I can tell you some. I was born in Wilkes County, North Carolina. And I grew up most of my life there, and we, of course, lived on a farm. Mm-hmm. What I can remember of it, because of my age and all. And my father left there and went to Elkin to work in Chatham manufacturing. Mm. And of course we all went with him, and I grew up then basically in Elkin, and I went to work. The first job I ever had was what we call an old shoe factory, and it was just down below where Chatham Manufacturing was.
Okay.
And they did some furniture work in there. And I was getting up, I wanted some change in my pocket. So I went down there and asked for a job. And behold, I got it. And it was the first one, and it was a tailing a wood planer. Mm-hmm. And it was cutting oak timber, making moldings to fit around the floor in various places. Mm-hmm. And when you put one of those pieces of timber in there and started that machine up, it's just like a machine gun. You couldn't hear anything. And it went through that machine and come out over there. Well, I worked there for a little while. I made 29 cents an hour. And my father was at Chatham, and I never have known whether or not he got me the job or not, but I went to work at Chatham. And I worked there in the weave room. And I stayed in the weave room weaving on the midnight shift for a few years until the war broke out. And when the war broke out, well then I had expected a draft from the Army, but I never did get one until late. And when I got one, I decided that I was not going in the Army.
Okay.
That I was going to go in the Marine Corps.
What drew you to the Marine Corps?
Well, basically what that I had heard about the Marine Corps was a good unit, a good outfit, a fighting outfit, and I had always, all my life, been an outdoor person.
Okay.
Hunting and all that kind of stuff. But I really liked the Marine Corps. It was an outstanding piece of equipment to me.
Good. Now, going from, before I get to boot camp, what was life like during the Depression? I'm sure that is one of the big events of your life.
Yes, it was. The Depression came when I was about 6 years old. And my father then, we lived in Elkin. And we had a pretty good life at that time because there was several of the family at home and working and shipped in to my father. And I wanted to help, but there wasn't much that I could do. But the last thing that I remember about doing before going into the Marine Corps was my father went bankrupt. He was, back then, we call anyone wealthy if they've got a little money in their pocket and own some property in this.
Right.
Well, he did. I don't know how much money that he had, but he had 3 pretty nice homes that he had bought and rented out and making a little money off of them. But he lost those. And then we went back to the farm.
Tell me, life suddenly, I know, changed whenever you went to boot camp. I take it at Parris Island, South Carolina?
Yes.
Infamous Parris Island. What was boot camp like in the early 40s?
Well, you had to be pretty tough in order to stand it. They put you through every aspect of war, I think, because that's what you was going to.
You had no doubts that you were going to combat, did you?
No, not a bit.
It's when instead of if.
Yeah. And we had all kinds of training, rifle training, and one thing, I don't know if you remember it or not, I guess you do, but you don't call it a gun.
No.
If you do, you're liable to eat it.
True.
But you learn how to take one of those rifles apart. It was an M1.
Right.
One of the best rifles I thought they ever made, and of course they've got all kinds of stuff now.
Of course, General Patton agrees with you too on the M1 Garand.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good endorsement right there.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was the best rifle that there was, and I only had one.
Okay.
I carried that rifle with me all the way through. And to give you an example, we went through all this training and everything till we got to go to the rifle range. And when we went to the rifle range, we stayed a week. And we practiced all the week until Friday. And my sergeant was so impressed with my rifle shooting that he got a lot of his buddies down there. Wanted them there on Saturday, wasn't it? Don't they finish up on Saturday?
Right. Oh, well, Friday now. It was probably Saturday back then.
Well, anyhow, he wanted me to do some shooting for him and his buddies on the 500 yards.
Okay.
And said, okay. Well, whichever day it was, Friday or Saturday, everybody was fixing to go to the range. Well, I had to go to the head, and I had to take a leak. So I had my rifle all ready, and I was looking really forward to it. And you know, in those tents, they have a big round pole
Yes.
up in the middle of it.
Right.
Well, I set my rifle up against that post, and I secured it. And when I come back, my rifle was laying over on that big board that went around the tent. Now, when I left there, my rifle was secured.
Right.
And everybody knew that I was doing real good. And so, well, there's not somebody that did that or not, I don't know. But anyhow, we went on to the range not knowing anything that's happened to my rifle. It was the same. And when we got there, he had his buddies there, and they told me to go ahead and start shooting. I couldn't hit the board back there.
Somebody had messed with the dope on the weapon.
Yeah. And he started getting on me, Sergeant did. I says, now wait a minute. I says, my rifle's good, and let me tell you what's maybe the wrong. And I told him, and they didn't believe it. They wanted to get out, but I didn't. So I never did get to prove that I could do it, but my point is I could hit one of those little blackbirds 500 yards away with my rifle. I never missed. Never missed. But that was the disappointing thing of my Marine Corps, was not being able to get my rifle records straight.
I
I've
could
never done anything about it.
Well, I could understand that. Now, tell me, I take it your drill instructors were nice, understanding men that didn't raise their voice?
Everything but that. Yeah, everything but that. They'd get right in your face, and you'd be lucky to breathe. They'd be so close to you.
Right.
And they wasn't just speaking, they was hollering. And right after we went in and started drilling and all one time, we was drilling, and this sergeant, we had a corporal and a sergeant. And the sergeant was doing it, because I don't know why that day, but anyhow, we was lined up, and he was going along, looking at us and speaking to us and saying something or another. And he asked us something about a rifle, but I can't remember what that was. But when he got to me, he asked me. And I couldn't, and I knew that rifle backwards. And I couldn't tell him nothing about that rifle.
Little intimidation factor going on?
He called me everything in the book, but he says, of all the people in this platoon, he says, I thought that you could do that. But I didn't. But right after that, and after all my training was done, well, then I went into drill instructor.
So, at that time, if you were an AJ squared away recruit graduating from boot camp,
Yeah.
then you could become a drill instructor without any experience in the fleet.
The only answer that I can give you to that is that you have to. They thought that I was qualified.
And certainly. Now, are you aware that you are in very good company? Because joining you and as a recruit that stayed at Parris Island to become a drill instructor,
Yeah.
of those Marines in World War II that accomplished that, Sterling Hayden, the movie actor, was one.
Sterling Hagen.
Sterling Hayden.
Well, I can't say that I remember it, but I remember one. Tyrone Power.
You were a drill instructor with Tyrone Power.
Well, he was there.
Well, I'll be doggone.
Yeah. So, no.
A country boy from the mountains of North Carolina going through boot camp with Tyrone Power. Or serving with Tyrone Power. Who would have thunk it?
Well, I don't know. But when he finished up as lieutenant.
Okay. Now, how long were you a drill instructor at Parris Island?
Well, not really long. I didn't like the way that the boys was treated to start with. Not realizing why they was being treated this way to start with. But I'm going to say about 6 months.
Okay.
And I just couldn't do that. I just couldn't. I seen one drill instructor beat a boy and at night, and he was in the bed asleep, and the drill instructor slipped in, and he started beating that poor boy. I thought personally he was going to beat him to death, but he didn't, and I don't know what happened after that to that. But such cases as that, and other situations, I just couldn't handle it. It's not in me to do
Right.
that.
Yes. Now, just for a little clarification for the general public, up until incidents in 1974, the officer supervision of drill instructors at Parris Island was minimal. Now, after the McKeon incident, where the drill instructor marched a platoon into the Tidal Creek in Parris Island, South Carolina, and drowned, if memory serves me correct, 2, and it was discovered that he had been drinking that day, things changed quite a bit. However, during the Vietnam War, drill instructors would often be given platoons of up to 100 recruits to train with 2 to 3 drill instructors, and corporal punishment was administered then, and in 1974 it came to a head. Now it is totally different, but this is an era which we refer to as a former drill instructor as the beat 'em and keep 'em. It was very compressed training. You were not given allowances in very little time, and this did happen, not to cover it up. And JT is correct. Now, from Parris Island, where did you go next?
From Parris Island, I went to Quantico.
As a drill instructor, or?
No, I went to a drill instructor. I went in the fire department.
Fire department, okay.
They qualified me into a fire department, and I didn't know what one end of the hose from the other. But I stayed in there a while, and I liked it pretty good. But the time that you would have off for your recreation was very poor, because you worked 2 days and off one, and that one day that you was off, you had to tell them where that you was at and where you was going to be in case of a fire. And the way those buildings were in Quantico, if one of them got a fire, they all just about burned.
Yeah, and if I remember right, these were World War I barracks.
Yeah, World War I.
So the timber would have been old and dried out, and not well taken care of, I would say.
Yeah.
When did you go to the South Pacific?
No, that's one I hadn't thought of. I went to the South Pacific in 19 and 40, the early part of 43. Because we went to Guadalcanal and stayed there a while. And I think the purpose of it was to take our company, 6th Marine Division, and to Guadalcanal, and there was some not much fighting going on, but there was some. But I think the whole purpose is to get the whole outfit prepared to go. And then for some reason, we went to Guam and stayed there a while. And then we went from there, from Guam, we went overseas. Now, wait a minute, no, that's not right. When I went overseas, I left, well, let's see, go back to, the best that I can remember from, what was the name of it just leaves me like that. The place that was Tyrone Power.
No. Well, you mean Parris Island? Well, we went to Parris Island, then you went to Guadalcanal. Shortly after that there would have been Bougainville.
Yeah.
Tarawa. Peleliu.
No.
Saipan. Guam.
No, we come to Guam. We come back to Guam from Guadalcanal.
Okay.
There, and from Guam, we left and went back into a light battle, and went then to Okinawa.
Okay, so you were in the Okinawan campaign.
Yeah.
Is there any, during this time in the South Pacific, does any event stand out in your mind that you would like to speak about? I know it was a rough time.
The South Pacific was very, very bad. It was very rough. You didn't know whether or not you was going to step in a mine hole or run into a mine or what. You just didn't know. It was so bad, the jungle. And the worst thing I think that was being there and being able to get through it and get out because of seeing so many men. Because when we went into Okinawa, I was there on the beach, and from the beach you could see men just dropping just like flies. But they finally secured the beach and went on in and a little ways. But one of the things that will hurt you, I think, is seeing all that group of men laying in the water floating. It hurts you. But when we got in, I was secured with a submachine gun to secure part of the beach, from keeping them coming in, keeping the Japs coming in. And this is a story that you may not, people may not believe, may not think about.
Yeah.
When we was going into Okinawa, and I hadn't thought about anything much before about this, not going back home. Some, but not much. My wife was there, and I had just my first child was just born. And I decided that I was going to find out what was going on with me. And I tried to, and I did. And we was on board ship going in before we got there. It was on Easter Sunday morning in 1943, wasn't it?
42. That would have been 1945 on Okinawa, 1944 on Okinawa.
When the invasion was?
Yes, Easter Sunday,
Easter Sunday morning.
April the 1st,
yeah.
1945.
Okay, I guess that's right. But before we got in, we was aboard ship. There was a storm coming up, and they run us in, and you know how they are inside. You're 4 and 5 people up top of you. And I was on the bottom bed. And it's kind of, after I got thinking about it, it's a coincidence why that I was on the bottom bed. But I was laying there, and I got to thinking about my family, my wife, and my kid. May not never see them again, and all that, you know. And I decided I was going to ask the Lord if He would show me, if He would be with me. Now, the Bible says that He will be with you and lead you and guide you throughout life if you'll follow Him. Well, I have been in a church about all my life and done some things, but I just broke down. I could have floated that ship with tears because I was so upset and tore up. But I was doing it to what I felt like was right. I didn't do it to get back home.
Right.
I wanted to do it if He was with me. And all of a sudden, I seen something raise up out there. Just like that right there. It wasn't this up. It was up, very slow. And it was a resemblance of Jesus Christ. And I heard him say, and seen him say, I am with you. And from that time on, I never worried about it. My time was just spent doing what I had to do to get back home. But let me go back a step, or farther on out a step. When we was laying on the beach, they picked a bunch of men, I don't know how many it was of them, to go out and secure the area, see what was going on. And I begged the sergeant to let me go. I said, Sergeant, I just want to go. I just begged him to let me go. No, he says, I need you right here. He says, you stay right here. And I did. And quite a little while, there was a donkey. They didn't have mules or horses. A donkey come up. And that's another coincidence. He come up to the where we was at.
Yeah.
And he stopped. And this boy, that was a wonderful person, fell off of that donkey, dead. He had the strength somehow or another that God gave him to ride that donkey in there and fall off there back with the rest of the men.
Now, was that the only survivor?
That was the only survivor that come back. Yeah. But there again, now, when you put all this together, was there a cause for me not to go?
Yeah.
Was there a cause for that donkey to come back and be able to get and take the sand home and all that? I believe there was.
And I, as you and I have discussed before, I believe that you're correct, but you are one of the few people that were lucky enough to see your cause.
Yeah.
Because once you returned, before I move on, though, is there anything else that you want to speak about during that period? I know it's hard. I know you related one day how you had gone to the hospital and you happened to go into a ward. Would you speak about that, or do you want to?
Well, on Guam, they were still having air raids and bombing and all. And this evening, that evening, there was sirens set off for air raid. And this guy and I were out by ourselves, and we didn't have any place to go but a ditch. And they had been a bulldozer in there digging out a big ditch for some reason. And he and I both ran and jumped in that ditch. And I don't know how he jumped in. I don't know how he did it, but I went in on my knees and on my hands. And I had rocks sticking in my knees and my hands where that they was real sharp. And because when I hit that bank, I laid down. And I had those rocks in my knees. And it was bleeding pretty bad. And after it all was over, I went up to the field hospital. And doctor didn't seem very concerned about it. But he put some bandages and stuff on it and done it up. Of course, it swelled up right big. But a while after that, we was some of us boys was going up to the front, was taking food for those that was already up there. And they had them in these big old tin cans, metal cans.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what kind of metal it was, but there was the compartments in them, you know.
Yeah. And we called them vat cans.
Did.
Yeah.
I don't know what they call them, but I wished I had never seen them. But I was sitting up on top of one of them, the big one, and that metal in that truck was, of course, pure metal, iron, I guess. And we started up and started to go up this hill, and those things started sliding out. And there wasn't no way to stop it. There wasn't no way. And when I went out on my back. And I thought it had killed me. But I went to the field hospital, and they sent me on to the regular hospital there in Guam. Or was it Guam? No, it wasn't Guam. It was when we was, yeah, I guess it was. I'm not sure, but anyhow, that was there wasn't a bad thing, but church got the records to search it out, but they never did find anything that showed up. But there's several things, I guess, they don't come to my mind, but those.
Let me ask you of a day that I bet you cannot forget. The day the war ended, how did you feel?
Well, there is really no feeling to explain that how good it did feel to know that we was going to go home, that the war was ending, and there was Jeps had resigned, give it up, and the one thing that hit my mind was I was going home to see my babies.
Yeah. You had survived. You had survived.
Yeah, that I had survived, and I really look forward to it, to get everything squared away and left.
Yeah. You know, just as an aside, I spent 3 tours on Okinawa. Mm-hmm. My first year in Okinawa was 1975. And in 1975, just to give you viewers some idea of what you went through, in 1975, on an average month, EOD, explosive ordnance disposal, whenever they found unexploded ordnance on Okinawa, they were destroying 300 tons a month. My next tour in 1981, it was 25 tons. My last tour in 1987, they were down to an average of 17 tons of ordnance a month. And I went back for a training trip in 2008, and they were 5 tons, even this length of time back. Yeah. So that would give you some idea of the ordnance that was expended. Now, once you left the Marine Corps after World War II, how did your Marine Corps experience affect your civilian life?
Terrible. Terrible. I thought I was going crazy. I got back and got settled down and I hadn't gone back to work, but I was loafering around. And I remember going down in Elkin and standing there on the corner. And I was so tore up, so so bad that I asked the Lord to make another war so I could get back.
We call that today PTSD, but we didn't know anything about that back then, did we?
No.
Thank you for
No.
this.
I really wanted to go back so bad, boy. I'd give anything. I'd have left my family and everything because I was at the point of an end.
Did you miss your brothers in arms?
Yeah.
That's it. It's a friendship that you can't explain, does it?
No. No. You take up with more than well, you don't all of them. You had a buddy.
Yeah.
I had a buddy. We all had friends. It's kind of special. And I remember this one boy. His name was Demacchio. I don't know what nationality he was, but he becomes so close to me, and I didn't know anything about this, that he wrote home to his family and told his family that I had saved his life, and he was gonna bring me home with him. And I never did do it because of the family and all, but you know that boy come down there and seen me.
He did.
Yes, he did. Yeah. But he was a good old boy. And he was real good, honest, everything.
Yeah.
And he really loved his family and wanted to get back to them, and he tried to tell me about his family and how they was and all, but I couldn't understand it. But and the boy that fell off of the donkey, he was a real good Christian boy, because one time on Guadalcanal, they had a little gambling place set up. And some of them gambled, throwed away their whole paycheck on
Right.
it, but some of them was just penny stuff. But we was talking, Demacchio, whatever it was, and I and this boy was talking, and he said he didn't gamble. He sent his money home to his family, and he was from Pennsylvania, and he really loved his family. But he was a good man, and I remember him very, very much. But I can't remember his name. But there's so many things in there. And you're talking about all this explosive stuff on Okinawa. When so many men was there, can you imagine how many men was blowed up and tore up with all of that stuff?
Oh, yeah.
And these caves that they had, that they could go for miles in them. And they could go in here and go in out over yonder and fight. But it was a pretty bad situation. And I understand that Guadalcanal, I don't know how bad it was, but I understand that Guadalcanal and Okinawa invasion was basically the same. Basically the same. There was more men on the inside, more Japs on the inside, waiting for us to come in than there was to get on the beach.
Well, having gone to Okinawa and able to go into the naval headquarters tunnels in Okinawa
Yeah.
and look out a aperture over the ground you fought on, I don't know how you're here, JT.
I don't know either.
I mean,
I don't know.
it was wide open and very little cover,
Yeah.
and that is known as one of the biggest battles.
Is that right?
Oh yes, sir. And Pork Chop, Bloody Nose Ridge,
Yeah.
I've walked it.
Oh, have you?
And oddly enough, to this day, and as I said, I was in Okinawa last in 2008, there's an American-Japanese group that are still opening caves on Okinawa
Is that?
and removing the bones of the Japanese soldiers
Yeah.
and repatriating them back to Japan at their war memorial.
Is that?
But it is a joint, and they continue to do that. So people cannot understand
No.
that and the destruction and the inhumanity of man.
Oh, there's an old saying. You have to be there to understand it.
Amen, brother.
You have to be there to know what it is. But now that I'm 92 years old, I don't want to go back. I realize now that the chances are would be different.
Yes.
I don't want to go back, but I wouldn't take anything for what I've been through.
Yes.
I wouldn't take anything for it.
Well, now after the war, you became a businessman, did you not?
Yeah, I was in the finance business for a company that they had several offices, and they were opening new offices all along, all the time, grouping. And I stayed in it for 18 years.
18 years.
Yeah. And believe me, I knocked on a lot of doors.
I believe that. Well, tell me, whenever you came to Alleghany County,
Yeah.
what was Alleghany County like then?
Oh, it was very, very, very small and very
Intimate?
well, unfinished.
Right.
But now let me go back.
Please.
I went back to 1940, and I was in Alleghany County.
1940.
Yeah. And I came up here with my girlfriend
At that time.
at that time, and we come up here to get married.
We were known as a marriage capital.
Absolutely. I used to marry a lot of people that come over there.
There you go.
But ever who it was, Glenn
Nichols,
Nichols,
I believe it was, yes.
I believe it was.
Just, he was the magistrate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But I got, we got here and went in, and she was 17 years old. And he said, no, he says, I can't marry her. And I said, why not? He said, well, she's not old enough. I thought, boy, she's old enough for me.
Two definitions there.
Yeah. But he wouldn't marry, so we went back to Elkin. And we decided, well, where are we going? I go to the preacher, our preacher.
Mm-hmm.
And we went to his house. His wife said, well, you've dismissed him about 20 minutes ago. He's just left to go down into the country to hold a revival.
Okay.
I said, we'll catch him. And she told us where he's going, and that was only one way to go then. And we caught him over in Jonesville.
Okay.
And the roads goes to Winston-Salem then, 67 I believe it is. Road goes to Statesville down this way, I don't remember what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And we caught him right in the corner, right here. And got him out of the car. And he says, what in the world's going on? We says, I want you to marry Gladys and me. He says, here? I says, right here. I says, this is as good a place as you'll ever find. He said, well, all right. And he married us sitting right there. Had 2 witnesses in the back of the car, her cousins and his girlfriend.
Okay.
And he says, well, I pronounce you man and wife. And I reached over and gave her a little kiss.
Just a little one?
Well, I didn't want to go into that. But I tell you what, I gave him my last dollar.
Last dollar.
Last dollar. But when I went to work
Mm-hmm.
at a job, I'd make money. When I was in the Marine Corps, I sent home everything that I made. But while I was in the Marine Corps,
Mm-hmm.
I built a home.
Okay.
It was a nice home then,
Mm-hmm.
1940.
Yes, sir.
It was a nice home. And the day that I mustered out in New River, I think it was, they gave me a check for $100. I went straight to the building loan and gave her that check, and she gave me a bill of clearance on my home.
I'll be doggone.
Almost in 4 years, I paid for that home. Well, my wife worked and she'd helped some
Mm-hmm.
other things. But I sent my money home. It was, if I didn't, I knew I'd waste it.
Yeah.
But
Well, there wasn't too much to spend it on out there either, was there?
no, most of them was gambling.
Yeah.
And that was about it that I know of, that I remember. It was pretty much blank. You could eat a coconut.
Yeah. If
know-
you could get it.
You know, when we landed on Guadalcanal, they told us, now, you men, do not eat these coconuts or the juice. If you do, you'll have diarrhea from now on. Now, I never did eat any, drank any,
Right.
so I don't know whether they did or not. I can't remember.
They act as a laxative, I can assure you of that.
Well, they had a lot of coconuts there. And one of the beautifulest sights that I ever seen while I was in Guadalcanal, I was outside of my tent, and the stars was out, the moon was out, and the dew had fell on these coconut leaves,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just like a bunch of diamonds, all colors. It was the most beautiful thing you've ever seen in your life.
With the Southern Cross in the sky.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. Country boy in the mountains of North Carolina didn't expect to see that in his life at that time, did he?
No, sir. No, sir. I never did expect to see anything like that. I never expected to see a lot of things, but God looked after me, and I did want to do a lot of things, but I didn't have the education to do it. So I did what I could do. But you had to have some education
Oh, yeah.
to run offices and open up offices. I opened up new offices in different places, and I ran the largest office that we had. The last new office that we opened was in Hendersonville. Yeah. And I stayed there for 2 years. Beautiful, no problems. Everybody was paying their bills. Mm-hmm. And here comes the owner. He says, I've got some bad news. He says, the manager in Lenore has had a heart attack and died. He says, I want you to go down there and take it over and do what you need to do. Mm-hmm. And I did. And I stayed there till I had an accident.
Okay.
And when I had that accident, you know how companies will do. I stayed in the hospital for a month with heart problems and all kinds of problems. And when I got out, I had I was taking all kinds of dope because it tore up my heart valves, tore up leaders, everything.
Mm-hmm. Very
up.
serious injury.
Very serious, car hitting me in the back. And I stayed there for about a month. And they called my family and said I was going to die. But I didn't. So the doctor finally said, well, we're going to let you go home. And I went home. But when I went there, I went to bed. I went to bed, covered up my head, laid there and cried. And they come and told me, they said, well, you're going to have to get back to work because if you don't, you're going to lose your job. Well, at that time, I don't think that I could have lost my job.
Right.
But I didn't do nothing about it. But I went back to work. While I walked in the door, I said, well, you better be looking for another job. After being with them for 18 years, they wanted to get rid of me. And one of the things was that they hired a bunch of people from the north come down. Their aspect of what to do and how to do and deal with the southern people, they didn't understand. So I don't know what happened, but I know the boy that was there when I left, they finally got rid of him.
Yeah.
But John, I've had a good life. And as I said, I've got a good marriage here with Wanda. She's a real nice lady, she's real sweet. And she'd go through fire for me.
Now, is that one of the good things that Alleghany County brought into your life?
Well, let's see. Well, yes and no. Before that I got married with her, I was truckling around a little bit with some other girls.
Oh, okay.
We'll not go into that.
Well, let's look at Alleghany. You said that you came up to marry in Alleghany in 1940. When did you come back to Alleghany County?
I've been here 43 years.
So 43 years. I believe you were in real estate. So that brings us back to 69, 1969, 1970?
1970, 1969. I can't think which it is.
Now, back then, it was quite a different place. We had Haynes, Troutman.
Yeah.
It was a bustling town back then, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. And
I'm carrying groceries at NB Smithy's for Kern Wagoner.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah. I know you remember Kern Wagoner.
Yes, I do very well. Yeah. But I got along very good here because It just so happened that the furniture store here was just not doing any good. And they had a good opportunity because him and another little furniture store over there, a lot smaller, across the street from us, where the whiskey store is now. We was the only two around, and what we did was, somehow or another, I can't remember, but I was in Statesville one day, and I saw Blackwelders, and I recognized it with a store up here. And so we decided to stop. Went in, talked to Mr. Blackwelder and everything. And I thought, well, if you ever need anybody up in Sparta, I says, let me know. I says, I've been around a little bit, handle people pretty well. He says, were you looking for a job? I says, well, I've not been looking, but I stayed in the real estate from 19, and the time I come back from Tennessee, I stayed in real estate for 50-some years. And I said, well, yeah, I says, I could consider a job. So he says, well, he says, I'd like to talk to you about it, and we talked. And he talked to me, wanted to know if I'd be interested. I said, well, I won't be interested until I go up there and analyze the place, see what it is. So as you let me know. Well, I went up there and looked it over, seen what was going on, and I seen what was going on very quickly. So I left, and I didn't say anything to anybody, but I went back to Statesville. I said, Mr. Blackwell, I says, the only way that I will consider even that store up there is for you to write me a letter acknowledging that I have full authority to do anything, any way, anytime that I wanted to. That was my prerogative. And do you know I carried that letter around because I thought so much of that old boy for a year.
Never did you ever have to pull it out?
Yes, I did. His wife was a big problem. She thought she was a thing, and she made some blobble about me, something or another, and it just hit me just like that. And I says, that's it. And I remember Welborn was standing in front of the store. And I called him back. I said, Wilbur, come over here and let's sit down at this desk. And I said, Wilbur, I don't know nothing else to tell you or to bring this out to you, but I'm going to give you a letter from Mr. Blackwelder. And I says, it's for you to read and do then between us. He read it, and he got up, he walked up out in the hallway in the store, and he hollered at his wife. He says, come on, get out of here. I remember the boy's words. And he got out and went out. That's the last time I ever seen him in the store. But there was a lot of things that needed to be changed. And you couldn't buy furniture, you couldn't buy mattresses, you couldn't buy anything because of such a bad credit.
Well, but look back whenever you first came to Alleghany County to now. What's the biggest change that you've seen?
Everything closing up, for one thing. All the factories is gone.
Yeah.
You have no mercantile to go to. The grocery store, 2 grocery stores is all we have to mount anything. And gas stations is here or there. But it's just gone down to nothing.
You know, JT, looking back on your life, You started out in the Great Depression. You went to work young. You served your country as a United States Marine. You served your God as a minister. And that deal that whenever you asked for his guidance off of Okinawa, he did real well by you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's given you 2 beautiful women.
Yeah. Yeah.
You've had a good life, my friend.
Yes, I agree, 100%.
Well,
I've done real well since I've been in Sparta. When I come to Sparta, I think I had $2,000 cash money in my pocket. And I come up here, and then I went to work in a furniture store, and then real estate. I had real estate license in Tennessee, North Carolina, and Georgia. So I got to listening and investing a little bit to where I invested what I could, and I'd buy it. A lot of times at auctions, and then I'd take it before that I would get the deeds signed. I had it sold. I've done that so many times. And property all over the county, and some here in town. I bought 2 or 3 houses here in town, I remember. And when I got into the housing business, I had to do a little different. I'd move in one, and then I'd go to work on it, get somebody to help me do whatever I needed, and I did. And when I got it fixed, it was pretty good. Then I put the house on the market and I sold it. I made a pretty good little sum of money.
nothing wrong with that, my friend. Nothing wrong with that.
No, sir. So that was the way it went till I left. I left Black Welders and I quit the real estate, and I was more satisfied. Really, but I'll tell you one thing. You won't find a place that's closer to God than it is here.
And you know, JT, thank you for your time. Thank you for coming in. Thank you for telling us your life and sharing this with us. Godspeed to you and yours, and Semper Fidelis.
Thank you, Semper Fidelis.
Okay. I hope you have enjoyed this episode as much as I have. Again, it is a pleasure that the Historical Museum and the Genealogical Society of Alleghany has started this project. It will be a remembrance for future generations of Alleghany County. Thank you.